Hey trackies, welcome back to another video. Please remember to smash that subscribe button. Double check to see if you're subscribed. This is not the main channel, so get yourself subscribed. Also trackies, hit that like button. That's how the video gets to the YouTube algorithm. Share the video if you care. I hope you care, so share. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the discourse in the comment section below. Yeah, you guys are always having some, conversations down there, and I definitely enjoyed. All right, so trackies, Grand Slam Philly. Yeah, Franklin Field to be exact. Day one. Excited to tell you about the results. Clearly, from a Jamaican perspective. All right, so kicking things off with the first event, and I have to say, shout out to Grand Slam Track. I have been complaining about the website and the results. It was the hardest thing to read. You know what I mean? It wasn't user friendly. And I'm not saying it's the hardest thing to read, but it wasn't user friendly. Let's put it that way. And now they have it, a bit more user friendly and more concise as well, where it's just one click and you get everything right in your face. So I'm really loving it. Shout out to Grand Slam Track League. Yeah, and I want to start with the women's 400-meter hurdles where we had Anjanette Knight and Rochelle Clayton competing there. Now, clearly, Sydney McLaughlin-Leveroni, the world record holder, and, the previous two Grand Slam, track winner of, the Kingston leg and, of course, the Miami leg, dropped down from the 400-meter hurdles. Track is the weirdest thing, She's the world record holder, and clearly every time she runs, we're supposed to be enjoying, her competing, but it was starting to become a little bit meh. And I couldn't believe the fact that I'm like, okay, why am I bored watching this absolutely phenomenal athlete glide around the track seamlessly, destroying everybody? You know what I mean? And it looks like, Sydney read the room. Sydney was like, all right, y'all are bored. Let's go do something else. You know what I mean? And that's what she did. So she did not take part in the women's 400-meter hurdles, which left room for the Olympic medalist and a Cockrell silver medalist at that, on a Cockrell, to stand out and show out in this particular race. And she did so, trackies, running a 54.04 seconds. So she took the win there. And of course, we had Anjanette Knight, as I said, and Rochelle Clayton. Anjanette Knight was third, and she ran a 54.86 seconds, with Rochelle Clayton running a 55.14 seconds. I think the early phases of the racetrack was pretty good, for the Jamaicans, especially Anjanette Knight. I really loved, her first 200, but the last 200 wasn't that strong. And I kind of keep waiting for Anjanette Knight, to come into her own, because really when she burst on the scene, fresh from, her collegiate, performances, I was really excited to see her really come into this event and, take it over. I definitely think she has a perfect, physique for the event, but it hasn't really happened yet. I'm still waiting around, still being patient, but I definitely think she's really talented, but it hasn't really come to fore yet. But yeah, as I said, in this race, she was third. And of course, Rochelle Clayton, remember, she's coming back from a slight, setback, that happened in Kingston. So she's gradually taking her time to get back into the thick of things, Tracky. So no real concern yet, even though trials, is right around the corner, just a month away pretty much. No real concern as far as I'm concerned for Russia. I think she'll be ready in time, or at least I don't think there, that many people that will potentially, boot her out of a spot. So yeah, each race she's getting sharper and sharper. So I'm enjoying, watching her come back. She's that go-to girl for us when it comes to potentially, medaling in this women's 400-meter hurdles event, though it has gotten deeper from a global perspective, so things will get tougher, as we progress through the years. But yeah, that's what happened in the women's 400-meter hurdles. Jumping from that to the men's 400-meter hurdles, where we had Alyssa Dos Santos, and yes, Trackies, it was confirmed again that he is 6'7". He certainly does not look 6'7" when he's on that track. I swear to you, when I compare him to basketballers on the screen, he doesn't look as tall as they are. I don't know if it's because he's not as big, but he certainly doesn't look that tall. But yeah, he's 6'7". He didn't get the best start for this particular racetrack, but he turned things up in the final 100, and he's like, listen, I'm Alison Dos Santos. I'm only supposed to ever be behind a Rai Benjamin and also a world record holder, Karsten Warholm. Those are the only two athletes that I will allow to beat me, and that's pretty much what happened in this race. He stomped his authority to win, 48.11 seconds. Trevor Bassett was second. He ran a 48.25, and Chris Robinson was third, 48.77. So they were challenging for sure Alison Dos Santos, but Alison was like, nah, I need to dismiss y'all. And he did exactly. So we had a Scenic Wilson in the race trackies, and he ran a 49.68 seconds. A pretty balanced race, you would say. Not really anything, really fast or, dramatic going on in the beginning of the race. And he pretty much just held that through, for the entire race. So yeah, trackies, that's what happened with an Scenic Wilson in the men's 400-meter hurdles. Now let's jump over from the men's 400-meter hurdles to the men's 200 meters to one of my favorite athletes. And I don't think y'all remember me saying this from me was in high school, but Brian Level is actually one of my favorite athletes. He competed in the 200 meters alongside Kenny Bednarek, that has been undefeated for a Grand Slam. Zarnell Hughes on fire based on what we saw at the Adidas Boots meeting. And of course, track is, I wanted to see exactly how Brian Lavelle would compete in this event. And yeah, Kenny Bednarek went away with a win. Trackies, he ran a 19.95 seconds. No surprise there, trackies. Really, really strong bend from him. Actually, trackies, the commentators kept stressing the fact that, this track is curve friendly. So really, really good curve from Kenny Bednarek. By the time you finish the curve, at this particular or on this particular track, the race is pretty much done. And that's what happened here. Trackies, really, really strong curve. No competition. He pretty much walked the field over half a second faster than Zarnell Hughes, who finished second with a 20.50 seconds. And also Aaron Brown, also close third, 20.50 seconds as well, only separated by the thousands for those particular athletes. Now, Brian Lavelle in this race ran a 20.63 for fifth. Now, I did think trackies, he didn't have the strongest bend, and yeah, he has been working on his bend, over the years. Still not the strongest part of his race, but he definitely showed me a lot of strength in the final, maybe 75 meters of the race, since, the bend is probably 120, right? So with that being said, trackies, really, really enjoyed what I saw from Brian Lavelle. Looking forward to his continued progress. And as I said, he's definitely been one of my favorite athletes, and he remains to be one of my favorite athletes. And I can't wait for him to break through. And yeah, he definitely gave me a sub 10 scare earlier on in Jamaica. And I'm looking forward to him, especially over that 100 meters as well. I'm expecting a strong performance from him there. All right, track is jumping over from the men's two. Want to jump into the women's two, where track is, I think I'm going to retract my love for Melissa Jefferson. Because my love for her, track is, I'm starting to get a little scared. I'm starting to get a little scared of her. I love a woman on a mission. She looked absolutely fantastic in the last two slams, and this particular slam, track is, Gabby Thomas or no Gabby Thomas, Melissa Jefferson was like, I'm going to be taking this, and I should add her, last name now that she's married, Wooden, track is, and she was playing no games in this 200 meters. No, she took the win running a personal best 21.99 seconds trackies. Her bend was killer. Now, again, I'm stressing the fact that the bend for this particular track is really, really, long. So by the time you come off the bend, and she's a great curve runner, by the time you come off the bend, the race is pretty much done. And yes, she was able to hold off a Gabby Thomas that was finishing pretty fast. But yeah, she was done by the time she got off that bend. Absolutely blazing trackies. Gabby was second, 22.10 seconds, and Tamari Davis was third with her 22.59 seconds. Now, why I said I'm going to, revert my love, yeah, is because when it comes to, Jamaica versus anybody else, yeah, I ain't playing no games there. So do I love her? I'm going to have to put that love, under the chair or under the couch and sit on it. Because when it's Jamaica versus Melissa Jefferson, I'm not playing any games there. But yeah, I love her competition. Absolutely. As I said, I love a woman on a mission, and she's definitely giving me that. And yeah, she's looking better and better every time I see her sprinting. I was like, oh my gosh, she's a definite threat over that 100 meters. If not the two, right? She's definitely a threat over the 100 meters. And some may say, given what she's showing, she may be a threat over the two. I'm not really looking at it as a threat just yet over the two, globally at least. Maybe from a USA trials perspective, other athletes would have to look out for her. But from a global perspective, I'm not thinking, she's a major, major threat just yet. But for the 100 meters, these executions just tell you how much better she is at that 100 meters. So I'm really excited to see what it's going to amount to. But as I said, me look like I forgot to take back my love. No, That aside, let's jump into the women's 400 meters where we had another matchup between My Lady Paulina and, of course, Salwa Eid Nasa. Now, track is clearly these two women are the top women right now in 400 meters sprinting, and they've been pretty much trading wins when it comes to this 400 meters. And boy, Paulina, last time I run in Miami was like, I ain't losing no 400 meters again to nobody. I'm the Olympic champion and the world champion. And she came out again and took the win. Track is 49.11 seconds. Now, Salwa Eid Nasa was second to her track is where she ran a 49.77 seconds. And we had Nikisha Price that was third with a season's best run 50.04 seconds. Unfortunately, Salwa was DQ'd because she switched lanes. It seems as though, based on how the track there in Philly is, she didn't quite understand and ended up veering out of her track into Nikisha Price's lane and ended up being disqualified. But still a strong run. Track is what I would say is that her first 200 isn't as blinding as it was earlier on in the season. And we're still pretty early in the season. But I remember in those first few outings, her first 200 was ridiculous. And because of that, many athletes were not able to catch her, in that final two. But what we saw in Miami is pretty much what we saw here, in Philly, where we're not seeing that blinding first 200 meters. And because we're not seeing that blinding first 200, My Lady is much closer. And My Lady's last 200 is very, very strong, especially with those long legs. Yeah, if you allow her to be close enough to you in that final 100, I'm not sure you'll be able to defeat her given her stride length. That being said, awesome competition from those athletes, even though Salwa got DQ'd. Now, Nikisha Price, I have been so patient with our athletes this season, understanding that, hey, the season is pretty long. The World Championships is all the way in September. And also, given the fact that, she hasn't really been running a lot, I've been very patient, just waiting to see her, start to gradually get back into the conversation and remind the world that, yeah, man, she's also part of that big 400-meter conversation from a female perspective globally. And track is this particular race signaled that for me. Though it was only a 50.04, I loved how she attacked the race. Her first 200 for me, track is very, very strong. And of course, very balanced final 200 meters as well. As I said, only losing out to, a My Lady and also a Salwa. To be fair, they have been going harder, for much longer this season. So it's natural that they'll be much further ahead of her, from a training perspective. But Nikisha Price is slowly getting herself back into the thick of things. And I'm actually looking forward to her 200 meters coming tomorrow, because her first 200 meters in this 400 here, for me, it was very, very special, and it was showing us hints of the special talent that Nikisha Price is. Very smooth track is. Looks like she's barely running, and she's covering so much ground with her slight frame. She seems very small and tiny to me, but she's covering so much ground, track is. So very, very excited to see what she does tomorrow in that 200, especially given the fact that she's taking out her training partner that is much warmer than her right now, recently turned pro, Isabella Whitticock. I'm also keeping my eyes on her from a global perspective to see what she'll be able to do, once we head off to Worlds or maybe USA Championships. Let's start there, because first the athletes have to get past the championships, right? So looking out for her. Clearly, Alexis Holmes is always, a strong athlete, very consistent as well. She was fifth here slash fourth since, Salwa got DQ'd with a 51.02 seconds. All right, so track is moving on to the men's equivalent. That 400 meters track is pretty excited. I heard the commentators, hinting at a possible world record, and I was thinking to myself, what exactly are these people talking about? Anyway, I don't know sometimes what Anson is on. He's on to a different wavelength. But anyway, taking the win was Matthew Hudson Smith. He ran a 44.51 seconds. Caleb McRae was second. He ran a 45.04. And Jeremy Richardson was third. He ran a 45.05 seconds, with our Jamaican Javon Powell finishing seventh with a 46.08 seconds. So fast approaching. These races are pretty much just to sharpen these athletes up. Let's see what Javon Powell can, muster in the next coming weeks before he heads off to the national championships to vie for one of those spots in that all-important 400 meters. Now, track is jumping on over to the final event that I want to cover here, which is that women's 100-meter hurdles. And I'm definitely excited to talk about this one because, of course, Sydney McLaughlin Leveroni dropped down from the 4 to the 100 100-meter hurdles. And boy, have they been talking up Sydney potentially taking out everybody supposedly in this women's 100-meter hurdles. And I'm like, really? No. The women's 100-meter hurdles is the most competitive event. As I said, given how strong the field is, you can literally field two finals, and the athletes in both races will be just as strong. And yeah, definitely didn't think that this was an event that Sydney was just going to walk in and dominate. Obviously, when you have athletes that have been out here killing it, and this is actually their pet event. And they showed that in this particular race where we had Ackera Nugent walk away with her only win on the day, track is, where she won in a 12.44 seconds. So big win from Ackera Nugent. Then in second place was Tia Jones. She ran a 12.60, and Megan Tapper, our next Jamaican, was third, and she ran at 12.66 seconds. Now in this racetrack is Sydney McLaughlin Neveroni was fifth, and she ran at 12.77 seconds. I just thought it was a pretty strong run from her, given again that this is not her pet event. She definitely came in and dominated athletes that are running really strong in this particular event. So good running from her. Now Danielle Williams was seventh, and she ran at 12.84 seconds. Now Chakis, I thought this was a pretty strong run from Ackera Nugent. Got a pretty good start, and we all know her top end speed is pretty ridiculous, and she disconnected herself from the field and yet went away for a fantastic win. Tia, it's so funny when I think back to Miami, and I was saying to persons that, look here, not only did the wind, assist those performances, because I see a lot of people were saying, hey, it's the wind why they ran, American records. And I said, no, it's not just the wind. The track is ridiculously fast. You know what I mean? And I've just been watching the performances since then, and I've been smirking to myself thinking that, yeah, man, y'all didn't believe me when I said that track was fast. Well, guess what? As far as I'm concerned, if you're able to run American records from way back then clearly we should be expecting world records from these athletes, probably even sub 12, by the time we get to world championships, as far as I'm concerned. But that aside, track is, I already called it, and yeah, the performances are looking a bit more normal, from the athletes that are competing as the weeks have progressed since Miami. So yeah, I expected that. Wasn't the strongest run from Daniel, but that happens sometimes, track is, where, it's not your best executed race, and we just have to wheel and come again. And that's what she's going to have to do. She's definitely, one of the best hurdlers out there, hands down. No questions asked when it comes to the competition. And I love this consistent run that I see Megan Tapper on. For sure, track is, so far what I'm looking at, these three athletes are looking to be our best three athletes from a hurdles perspective for 2025 heading into the trials. And I'm expecting these athletes to probably take 1 through 3 once we get there. Things may change, but how things are looking right now, especially from a Megan Tapper perspective, typically I call 2. I'll call, Ackera, I'll call Danielle, and probably leave out one spot. But given what Megan is showing me, especially the consistency and the fact that she always turns up at trials, yeah, I'm expecting Megan to also take up one of those 3 spots as well. So I'm excited for trials, from a female 100-meter hurdles perspective. All right, so trackies, that is it. That's what happened on the first day for Grand Slam Track League Philly. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video, of course, and subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.